The Galactic tourism classification system had operated with meticulous precision for over 3 millennia, categorizing worlds across the spiral arm with the kind of bureaucratic thoroughness that would make a tax auditor weep with joy. Class 1 worlds were deemed pleasantly habitable. Think spa resorts with breathable air and complimentary continental breakfast. Class 10 worlds earned the designation absolutely unsurvivable, the kind of places where reality itself seemed to have filed a restraining order against life. Then there was Planet Mortalis 7, which had required the creation of an entirely new classification, Class 11, or, as the official documentation euphemistically termed it, existentially hostile to all known forms of life and several unknown ones. The planet boasted an impressive resume of lethality. Its atmosphere was a delightful cocktail of sulfuric acid vapor and radioactive noble gases that could strip paint off a starship hull at 50 kilometers altitude. The surface gravity fluctuated randomly between crushing and negligible due to unstable gravitational anomalies left behind by some long-dead civilization's failed experiment with physics. The local flora had evolved beyond mere carnivory into what xenobiologists technically classified as omnivorously vindictive, plants that didn't just eat other organisms, but seemed to hold personal grudges against the concept of life itself. The weather forecast for Mortalis 7 hadn't changed in recorded history. Acid rain with a chance of temporal storms, followed by evening showers of crystallized death. The planet's tourism board consisted of a single, perpetually updating, holographic sign that simply read, "Please read, don't." For 2,000 years, this system had worked flawlessly. Civilized species would review the classifications, calculate risk assessments, purchase appropriate insurance policies, and select vacation destinations that wouldn't require them to update their wills beforehand. The galaxy's tourism industry hummed along with the smooth efficiency of a well-oiled machine, generating profits and keeping mortality rates at socially acceptable levels. Then humans discovered space travel, and the entire system collapsed faster than a neutron star's self-esteem. The first sign of impending chaos arrived in the form of a cheerfully worded inquiry to the Galactic Tourism Board's customer service department. "Hey there, we saw your listing for Mortalis 7 and were wondering about group rates for a weekend trip. Do you offer insurance, or should we just bring our own body bags? Thanks, Earth Extreme Adventures Inc." Senior risk assessment specialist Crixtal the Cautious had been having a perfectly ordinary day, which by his species standards meant he'd successfully worried about 17 different potential catastrophes before his morning meal. The message appeared on his workstation display with the cheerful ding of routine correspondence, and he began reading it with the same methodical attention he applied to all tourist inquiries. By the third word, his primary neural cluster was experiencing what his species politely termed acute existential recalibration. By the end of the message, Crixtal was producing a steady stream of bioluminescent stress indicators that painted his workstation in alternating shades of panic and disbelief. "They want to visit Mortalis 7, he announced to his supervisor, his voice carrying the hollow tone of someone whose worldview had just been thoroughly violated. "For recreation." His supervisor, Glixmore the Eternally Prepared, paused in her meticulous organization of emergency protocols. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that? My translator must be malfunctioning." "Humans," Crixtal said, his stress bioluminescence now resembling a small rave, "have requested tourist information about planet Mortalis 7. They appear to believe it would make an excellent vacation destination." The office fell silent, except for the gentle humming of life support systems and the sound of Glixmore's careful worldview crumbling into dust. Meanwhile, 3-star systems away, Zephyr Kowalski was having the time of his life. He'd discovered the Galactic Tourism Database the way most humans discovered things, entirely by accident while looking for something else entirely. He'd been researching potential locations for Earth's first interstellar extreme sports competition when he'd stumbled across the classification system. "Check this out," he called to his companions, gesturing enthusiastically at his tablet. "They've got a whole planet that's basically designed for the ultimate challenge. Look at this description. Atmospheric composition incompatible with most known life forms. Gravitational anomalies of unprecedented lethality. Indigenous life forms exhibit unprecedented hostility. This is perfect. Dr. Melody Vasquez looked up from her own research where she'd been cataloging the 17 different ways the planet's ecosystem could theoretically kill her. As a xenobiologist, she found the prospect absolutely fascinating. The biodiversity implications alone are staggering, she mused. A biosphere that's actively hostile to foreign organisms would have had to develop incredibly sophisticated defense mechanisms. I wonder if they've published any papers on the evolutionary pathways. Captain Rex Tank Morrison, who had been looking for a quiet place to spend his retirement after 30 years of military service, found the planet's description oddly soothing. "Sounds peaceful," he rumbled, reading over the atmospheric composition data. "No crowds, no noise pollution, plenty of space to think. When do we leave?" The three had met at a coffee shop near the newly established Earth interstellar port, brought together by their shared interest in what the rest of humanity considered inadvisable hobbies. Zephyr collected extreme sports like other people collected stamps. Dr. Vasquez treated deadly research subjects like pets, and Tank had somehow managed to find every conflict zone on Earth during his military career and considered them relaxing getaways. "I've already submitted our application," Zephyr announced. "Told them we're interested in a weekend trip, figured we'd pack light, some basic gear, couple of sandwiches, maybe some sunscreen for the acid rain." Back at Galactic Tourism headquarters, Curixtal was experiencing what his species' medical professionals would later classify as a complete nervous breakdown. The humans' follow-up messages had arrived with terrifying regularity, each one more cheerfully catastrophic than the last. "Quick question about the gravitational anomalies. Do they affect sports equipment? Asking for a friend who wants to bring a paraglider. Do you have any restaurant recommendations? We're not picky eaters but prefer places that won't dissolve our stomachs. Thanks." One of our group is a scientist and wants to know if it's okay to collect samples of the carnivorous plants. She promises to be gentle. Rixtal had forwarded the messages up the chain of command, where they'd caused a cascade of panic that reached all the way to the Galactic Tourism Board's Emergency Council. Emergency sessions were called. Risk assessment specialists were pulled from vacation. Insurance companies began updating their policies to specifically exclude humans attempting recreational activities on death worlds. The consensus among galactic civilization was clear. The humans had clearly misunderstood something fundamental about the classification system. Perhaps their translation software was malfunctioning. Perhaps they didn't understand the mathematical notation used to express lethality indices. Perhaps their species had evolved without the basic survival instinct that prevented most intelligent life from voluntarily seeking out extinction. The Galactic Tourism Board dispatched their finest diplomatic attaché to Earth with instructions to gently explain the misunderstanding and redirect human interest toward more appropriate destinations. Class 2 worlds were suggested. Maybe a nice Class 3 if they were feeling adventurous. The diplomatic mission returned 3 days later with a comprehensive report that essentially boiled down to, "They understand perfectly, they want to go anyway." One of them asked if we knew any places that were more dangerous. As news of the human expedition spread through galactic communication networks, civilized species across the spiral arm began placing bets on how quickly the humans would die. The odds were calculated with scientific precision. Atmospheric poisoning within the first hour was considered the safest bet, with death by carnivorous flora running a close second. A few optimistic bookmakers offered long odds on the humans surviving long enough to be killed by gravitational. What no one had bet on was the possibility that the humans might actually enjoy themselves. The expedition launch was broadcast live across 17 star systems, partly for educational purposes, and partly because several civilizations wanted to document the exact moment when human hubris met cosmic reality. Crixtal found himself assigned as the official observer, a role that required him to monitor the humans' progress and file regular reports on their inevitable demise. The humans arrived at Mortalis 7 in a ship that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and optimism. Their landing approach ignored every safety protocol in the Galactic Handbook, instead following what their pilot cheerfully described as the fun route. a trajectory that took them through 2 different gravitational anomalies and a cloud of toxic atmospheric particles. "Well, that was invigorating," Zephyr announced as they landed, apparently unaware that their ship's hull had been partially dissolved by atmospheric acid during the descent. "Who's ready for some fresh air?" Dr. Vasquez was already at the environmental scanner, reading atmospheric composition data with the enthusiasm of someone discovering a new flavor of ice cream. "Fascinating. The sulfuric acid concentration is much higher than the initial surveys indicated. And look at these trace compounds. I've never seen molecular structures like this before." Tank stepped out of the airlock wearing what appeared to be standard environmental gear, took a deep breath through his respirator, and nodded approvingly. "Nice and quiet? Good visibility too once you get used to the acid fog?" Crystal, monitoring from orbit, began his first report with hands that trembled only slightly. "Hour 1. Humans have landed successfully, despite atmospheric conditions that should have dissolved their ship. They appear to be enjoying the scenery. Recommend increasing life insurance coverage for all personnel involved in this observation mission." The humans' first encounter with Mortalis 7's indigenous life forms occurred within 20 minutes of landing. The local flora, which had evolved sophisticated strategies for killing unwary visitors, launched what xenobiologists would later describe as a coordinated assault involving neurotoxic spores, razor-sharp projectiles, and some kind of localized gravitational manipulation. Zephyr's response was to laugh delightedly and immediately begin planning a return visit with his rock-climbing gear. "Did you see how those vines moved? That's incredible core strength. I bet I could set up some amazing routes using the natural anchor points." Dr. Vasquez had begun taking photographs and collecting samples, apparently oblivious to the fact that several plants were actively trying to digest her. "The adaptive mechanisms are extraordinary," she narrated to her recording device. "Note how the Carnivora hostilis specimens coordinate their attacks. There's clearly some form of chemical communication network. I wonder if they're available for academic exchange programs." Tank had found a comfortable boulder and was setting up what appeared to be a picnic lunch, methodically ignoring the writhing tentacles and snapping jaws that emerged from the ground around him. "Peaceful spot," he observed, unwrapping a sandwich. "Reminds me of basic training, but with better scenery." By the end of their first day, the humans had successfully survived contact with 14 different species of homicidal flora, 2 varieties of predatory geology, and a weather phenomenon that the planet's official documentation described as a localized apocalypse with light refreshments. Kriegstall's reports became increasingly frantic. Day 1 conclusion. Humans remain alive despite direct exposure to Class 11 environmental hazards. Dr. Vasquez has apparently made friends with a carnivorous plant. Mr. Kowalski is planning to use gravitational anomalies for what he terms extreme sports. Captain Morrison has established what he calls a base camp in the middle of a confirmed kill zone. Request immediate consultation with xenopsychology specialists regarding possible human immunity to common sense. The second day brought new challenges and new evidence that humans operated according to physics principles unknown to the rest of the galaxy. The morning's acid rain was greeted with enthusiasm by Zephyr, who declared it perfect conditions for a quick jog. Dr. Vasquez used the precipitation to conduct field experiments on atmospheric chemistry, apparently unconcerned that her equipment was slowly dissolving. Tank used the downtime to organize their supplies and plan hiking routes to what the orbital surveys had identified as regions of elevated lethality. The turning point came when they encountered one of Mortalis 7's apex predators, a creature the size of a small building, with more teeth than geometry should have allowed, and a disposition that made natural disasters seem friendly. The beast emerged from its lair with all the subtle menace of an avalanche, with anger management issues, clearly intending to add 3 more entries to its impressive collection of dissolved victims. Instead of running, screaming, or updating their wills, the humans reacted in ways that would later require the creation of entirely new categories in xenobehavioral studies. Zephyr immediately began calculating trajectory angles for what he called monster surfing, apparently viewing the creature's massive claws as potential handholds for an extreme sports routine that would have given Newton nightmares. Dr. Vasquez started taking notes on the creature's hunting patterns while simultaneously attempting to establish communication, operating under the assumption that something with that many teeth must have fascinating things to say about local ecosystem dynamics. Tank simply stood his ground, looked up at the towering predator and said, "Hey there, big guy. You seem upset. Rough day?" The apex predator, confronted with prey that refused to behave like prey, experienced what observers would later term an existential crisis. It had evolved over millions of years to hunt creatures that possessed basic survival instincts. The humans' complete lack of appropriate fear responses created what amounted to a philosophical paradox. With claws. After several minutes of confusion, during which the predator kept looking around as if waiting for the humans to start running or dissolving appropriately, it simply wandered away, presumably to find prey that would at least have the courtesy to act frightened. "Interesting social dynamics," Dr. Vasquez noted. "I think we hurt its feelings." By the third day, word of the humans' continued survival had spread throughout the galactic community with the speed of really concerning news. Emergency sessions were convened, xenobiology textbooks were revised, insurance companies began developing new actuarial models that accounted for the possibility that some species might actually be too stubborn to die appropriately. The humans, meanwhile, had established what they cheerfully termed a base camp in the heart of what planetary surveys had identified as the most lethal region on the planet's surface. They'd set up portable shelters, established communication arrays, and created what appeared to be a small research station dedicated to cataloging new and innovative ways that the planet tried to kill them. "Day 3 has been very productive," Dr. Vasquez reported during their evening check-in with Crazier. "We've identified 17 new species of predatory flora, documented 3 previously unknown atmospheric phenomena, and Tank has discovered a lovely spot for morning meditation that's only mildly radioactive. The gravitational anomalies are fantastic for training," Zephyr added. "I've been working on some new techniques that should be perfect for zero-G martial arts competitions. You should come down and try it sometime." Tank's contribution was characteristically understated. "Nice quiet planet, good for clearing your head. Couple of the local critters tried to eat me, but they were polite about it." Crystal's stress bioluminescence had evolved beyond simple color changes into complex patterns that resembled a technical manual for nervous breakdowns. His reports to Galactic Command had grown increasingly surreal. Day 3, humans continue to treat lethal environment as recreational facility. Dr. Vasquez has apparently entered into scientific correspondence with carnivorous geology. Mr. Kowalski is using gravitational anomalies for athletic training. Captain Morrison has been adopted by a pack of what appear to be radioactive predators, requesting immediate reassignment to desk duty in a nice, safe office somewhere very far away from any humans. The weekend trip extended into a week, when the humans discovered that Mortalis 7's dangers operated on a schedule. The planet's most lethal phenomena followed predictable patterns. The acid storms came every 48 hours. The gravitational anomalies peaked during specific tidal cycles, and the carnivorous plants had clearly defined hunting seasons. "It's like a natural theme park," Zephyr observed, consulting a schedule he'd created by correlating environmental data with personal injury statistics. "If you time it right, you can experience everything the planet has to offer without any permanent damage." Dr. Vasquez had begun corresponding with several galactic research institutions, sharing her findings about Mortalis 7's ecosystem with colleagues who responded with a mixture of scientific fascination and profound concern for her mental health. "The biodiversity here is incredible," she explained during a video conference with the Xenobiology Institute of Higher Learning. "The evolutionary pressures have created species that are essentially living weapons systems. It's beautiful, really." Tank had discovered that several of the planet's apex predators were actually quite sociable once you established that you weren't going to run away screaming. He'd begun what he called interspecies cultural exchange, which mostly involved sharing his lunch with creatures that could have easily eaten him instead. By the end of their extended stay, the humans had accomplished something that 3 millennia of galactic civilization had deemed impossible. They'd made Mortalis 7 seem hospitable, not safe, certainly, but manageable, in the way that natural disasters became manageable once you understood their patterns and prepared accordingly. The implications rippled through galactic society like gravitational waves through space-time. If humans could survive on a Class 11 death world, what did that say about their homeworld? Xenoanthropologists began studying Earth with renewed interest, discovering that what humans considered normal environmental conditions would qualify as moderately hostile by galactic standards. Earth's weather patterns, which humans described with casual terms like partly cloudy with a chance of tornadoes, represented the kind of atmospheric volatility that most civilizations encountered only during natural disasters. Earth's biodiversity included countless species that other civilizations would classify as biological hazards: sharks, bears, venomous snakes, and creatures that humans inexplicably kept as pets. The revelation that humans had evolved in an environment that was essentially a low-grade death world explained a great deal about their psychology. What other species considered dangerous, humans viewed as exciting. What other civilizations avoided, humans actively sought out for entertainment. Tourism boards across the galaxy began quietly updating their classification systems. Planets that had been considered moderately challenging were reclassified as human-friendly. Worlds that had been deemed too dangerous for most species were rebranded as adventure destinations with special human-oriented marketing campaigns. The economic implications were staggering. Adventure tourism, previously a niche market catering to the galaxy's small population of adrenaline addicts, exploded into a major industry. Planets that had been written off as uninhabitable suddenly found themselves hosting extreme sports competitions. Mortalis 7 itself became the galaxy's premier destination for what marketing departments termed authentic death world experiences. Guided tours were established, following carefully mapped routes that maximized exposure to lethal phenomena while maintaining what humans considered acceptable risk levels. Gift shops appeared, selling souvenir acid rain gear and novelty items made from carnivorous. Other civilizations attempted to emulate human approaches to extreme environments, with predictably mixed results. The Careful Consideration Collective of Prudentia Prime launched an expedition to a Class 8 world armed with 17 different types of safety equipment and a risk assessment protocol that required committee approval for each step taken. They made it approximately 50 meters from their landing site before deciding that discretion was the better part of continued existence. The warrior philosophers of Combatus attempted to match human fearlessness through intensive mental conditioning and spiritual preparation. Their expedition to a Class 9 world ended when their meditation retreat was interrupted by a localized volcanic eruption, leading to a philosophical crisis about whether it was possible to achieve inner peace while being chased by lava. The humans, meanwhile, had moved on to even more challenging destinations. Reports began filtering in of human expeditions to planets classified as theoretically impossible to survive and probably fictional due to extreme lethality. Each successful mission pushed the boundaries of what galactic civilization considered possible. 6 months after the original Mortali 7 expedition, Krixtal found himself promoted to Director of Human-Related Crisis Management, a position that hadn't existed before human space travel and now required its own department. His job involved monitoring human activities across the galaxy and providing early warning systems for the inevitable chaos that followed. His latest report read like a fever dream. Human expedition to planet Thanatos 12 has resulted in the establishment of the galaxy's first Death World resort. Amenities include guided tours of active volcanic systems, supervised encounters with apex predators, and a spa that uses naturally occurring acid springs for therapeutic treatments. Customer satisfaction ratings are inexplicably high. Recommend updating galactic insurance policies to account for possibility that humans consider life-threatening situations recreational. The final irony came when human tourists began complaining that Mortalis 7 had become too commercial and not dangerous enough anymore. The presence of safety protocols, guided tours, and gift shops had somehow diminished the planet's appeal to the very humans who had discovered it in the first place. Zephyr had moved on to exploring the galactic core, where gravitational anomalies and stellar radiation created what he described as the ultimate extreme sports environment. Dr. Vasquez had established a research station on a planet where the indigenous life forms existed in 17 different dimensions simultaneously, apparently finding multidimensional biology fascinating rather than impossible. Challeng had discovered a world caught in perpetual warfare between its geological features and had established a meditation retreat in the middle of the battlefield. The galaxy had adapted to the reality of human exploration with the resigned efficiency of evolution itself. Travel advisories now included special sections for human tourists, with warnings like, "This planet's lethal environment may not provide sufficient challenge for human visitors," and "Mortality rates for this destination are only 73% among non-human species." Insurance companies had developed specialized policies for human activities, with premiums calculated using algorithms that accounted for the possibility that their clients might actually be seeking out the very dangers they were being insured against. Medical facilities near popular human destinations had begun stocking treatments for injuries that their textbooks had previously classified as instantly fatal. The Galactic Tourism Board's new slogan read, "Explore the galaxy safely, unless you're human, in which case good luck, and please update your emergency contacts." As Crixtall filed his final report on the Mortalis 7 incident, he reflected on the lesson that humanity had taught the galaxy, that the line between impossible and merely challenging was largely a matter of perspective. What had seemed like the ultimate death world to countless civilizations had become, in human hands, a weekend getaway with unusually interesting weather. The greatest irony, he noted in his conclusion, was that humans hadn't changed Mortalis 7 at all. The planet remained exactly as lethal, as hostile, and as fundamentally incompatible with life as it had always been. What had changed was the definition of what constituted an acceptable vacation destination. Somewhere in the galactic core, where space-time itself seemed uncertain about its basic properties, Zephyr Kowalski was probably planning his next adventure, armed with nothing more than enthusiasm, basic equipment, and the unshakable human conviction that anything worth doing was worth doing in the most challenging possible circumstances. The galaxy would never be quite the same, and somehow that seemed perfectly appropriate for a universe that had just learned that its deadliest planet was, according to human standards, merely a nice place to spend the weekend.